Hello everyone, I'm Ishwari Shah from Krishna College of Physiotherapy, Karad, final year. I would like to thank Movement Master Academy for giving me this opportunity. Now I'll start with my topic, that is the assessment for painful shoulder. Anatomy of shoulder complex. It's called as complex because these four joints, that is the acromioclavicular, sternoclavicular, glenohumeral, and scapulothoracic joint, they all together work in a harmony to produce the movement at shoulder joint. Glenohumeral joint has a lesser articulating surface, and so the muscles, capsules, and ligaments play a very important role to stabilize this joint. These are the muscles around the shoulder joint, the anterior muscles and the posterior muscles. Ligaments, those are acromioclavicular, coracoacromial, coracohumeral, transverse humeral, superior medial, and inferior glenohumeral ligaments. As we know, shoulder is more prone to injuries. So now let's go towards the assessment part. There's an evaluation order. Starting with the subjective examination, that is the history taking. Whenever a patient comes to us, even a detailed history can make you to diagnose correctly. So the steps for the history taking are, it will include name, age, occupation, gender, dominance, chief complaint, history of present illness, etc. In case of age, it's very important to take because, for example, in case of shoulder condition, in rotator cuff tear, the age may vary, but in rotator cuff degeneration, it will be between around 45 years to 60 years. In case of adhesive capsulitis, it will be from 40 years to 60 years. Going for the objective examination, we have observation, that is look, palpation, that is feel, examination of movement, that is move, examination of muscle strength, joint play testing, special test, neurological assessment if any neurological signs present, functional tests for shoulders, and diagnostic imaging. On observation, we should look for any deformity. It will be structural, functional, or dynamic. Now, in case of structural deformity, example is step deformity, functional deformity, anything related to movement, and dynamic due to the muscle imbalance. One should also look for the posture, bony counters, soft tissue counters, muscle wasting, swelling or edema, wound, ulcer, or bruises. Coming to the palpation, you should look for the local temperature, tenderness, spasm, and muscle wasting. Here we can see, for example, the greater tuberosity. Now, as we know, the supraspinatus muscles and rest rotator cuff muscles, they insert over there. So whenever a patient comes with a complaint of pain around the greater tuberosity, you should never forget to rule out the conditions for the rotator cuff injuries. So thus palpation plays very important role. Here, in the posterior aspect, we can see supraspinatus, then there's the spine of scapula. Below it is the infraspinatus muscle, and just two fingers below infraspinatus muscle, you find teres minor, and below is the teres major. So surface anatomy is also very important for the assessment. Now, coming to the active and passive movements. Now, active movements are done for the contractile structures, as we know. So one should look for pattern, the rhythm, quality of movement, and the associated joints. Now, the passive movements will include pain-free complete, painful complete, pain-free limited, and painful limited. In case of pain-free complete, the patient is all right. In painful complete, you'll have the conditions like grade 3 tear ligament or rotator cuff tear. In pain-free limiter, you'll have conditions like subacromial bursitis, and in painful limiter, you may have the conditions like arthritis, capsulitis, etc. Now, registered isometric test. You'll be having grading as strong and pain-free, strong and painful, weak and painful, weak and pain-free. Now we know that these rims are done for contractile tissues and nerve. So if this weak and pain-free, it means the nerve is totally damaged and the muscles as well. One should also look for the abnormal end fields. Functional tests. So whenever a patient comes to us with any shoulder pathology, we should at least aim in the treatment to treat the patient accordingly so that he can do his ADLs. Now here's some a place scratch test where the patient attempts to touch the opposite scapula to test range of motion of the shoulder. On the left side, you will see the abduction and external rotation testing, and on the right side of yours, you will see it for the adduction and internal rotation. Neurological assessment, where you may see neurological signs. You should go for assessment for myotomes and dermatomes. C4, that is shoulder elevation. C5, shoulder abduction. C6, elbow flexion, wrist extension. C7, elbow extension, wrist flexion. And T1 is the finger abduction. For dermatomes, you go for C4, top of shoulder. C5, lateral deltoid. C6, tip of thumb. C7, distal middle finger. C8, distal fifth finger. And T1 is the medial forearm. Systemic versus musculoskeletal conditions. Now, it's also important to rule out the systemic conditions. One, it may mimic as musculoskeletal. So the indications will be disturbed sleep, deep aching or throbbing, constant wave of pain and spasm, which will not be, the pain will not be aggravated by mechanical stress, and also it will be associated with skin rash, fatigue, fever, generalized weakness, and infection. Musculoskeletal, the pain generally lessens at night. It is sharp or superficial ache. Pain usually decreases with cessation of activity, usually continuous or intermittent, or is aggravated by mechanical stress. Adhesive capsulitis, as a physiotherapist, we treat a lot of conditions. So adhesive capsulitis is amongst them, which is very common. It's an enigmatic condition characterized by painful, progressive, and disabling loss of active and passive glenohumeral joint range of motion in multiple planes. It's commonly seen in age 40 to 70 years and also seen in people with thyroid and diabetes, and is common in women. Now, it will come with a history of rest pain, history of trauma, pain worse with reaching, progressive loss of motion, and also whenever you ask a patient to pinpoint the pain where he's having, he'll always show towards the deltoid insertion or adjacent to it. Then when you test for external rotation, it will be always less as compared to the other. Scapular movement aberrations may be present, which will include the shrug sign, very important. And also the adhesive capsulitis is a hallmark, primarily the result of contracture of rotator interval and coracohumeral ligament. And whenever you go for testing of internal rotation, you will always find significant pain and weakness. And important, there will be no change in pain with neck range of motion. Examination, where passive range of motion will be equal to active range of motion. It will be diffusely tender to palpate, and pain will be present in all planes. Coming to the second condition, that is the rotator cuff tear, which are very common and the common cause and also the cause for disability. The frequency of rotator cuff tear increases with age, and it can be classified as partial thickness tears, full thickness tears, acute and chronic tears, traumatic tears, and degenerative tears. Now, a patient will come with a history of fall on outstretched hand, history of rotator cuff tendinitis. In acute condition, there will be pain, weakness, and disability. In chronic, it will be mostly the gradual onset of weakness and pain. Then, the rotator cuff pain will not radiate to elbow. The patient may describe crepitus whenever there is chronic full thickness cuff tears, and patient with cuff disease find relief by placing the affected arm overhead with the hand behind the head. That is the Saha position. On examination, you will find there's limited active range of motion and weakness because the contractile structures are involved and the passive range of motion will be normal. And whenever you do MMT, you'll find the weakness associated with pain in elevation and shoulder external rotation. The drop arm test and the empty can test at 30 degrees will be positive. Empty can test. So whenever you tell the patient to do abduction in a scapular plane, followed by the internal rotation, and will ask the patient to resist the downward force, there will be pain or weakness felt, and hence the test will be positive. Now here's my brother, and I'm doing the test on him for the empty can. So now he has abducted his arm at 90 degrees in the scapular plane with the internal rotation of his arm, and I'm telling him to resist my downward pressure. This is drop arm test for the supraspinatus muscle where the patient is asked to abduct his arm at 90 degree. And if patient is not able to hold it for a longer time or he immediately drops the arm and is accompanied by the pain, then the test is considered to be positive. Subscapularis test or the lift-off test where the patient is in standing position and is told to keep the dorsum of his hand on the back. The patient tries to lift his hand, and if he is able to do so, the test is negative. Further, the therapist also applies some resistance to check for the minor tear. So first he is doing it by himself, and then now I am applying the resistance. Infraspinatus test where the external rotation will be resisted. So I'm trying to resist the external rotation. Test for teres minor, also called as Hornblower sign, and the Petter test, where the patient is told to abduct his arm in 90 degrees in the scapular plane, followed by flexing the elbow to 90 degrees and then laterally rotating it where the resistance will be applied. The test will be considered to be positive if patient resists elbow or there's weakness or pain. Biceps tendinopathy. Proximal biceps tendinopathy is the inflammation of the tendon around the long head of bicep muscle. Acute bicep tendinopathy may occur because of sudden overuse. It's mostly seen between 35 to 65 years of age. Patient will always come with a history where his pain is radiating from anterior shoulder to anterior brachium. Pain with biceps flexion, especially with the supinated wrist. It has usually sudden onset and there won't be any change in the shoulder pain with the neck range of motion. On examination, it has tended to palpation on the proximal bicep tendon at bicipital groove. Patient with extension of the shoulder. Patient will have pain with resisted supination and resisted bicep flexion, and the tests done are the Speed's test and Yergason's test. Yergason's test, where the patient's elbow is flexed to 90 degrees and stabilized against the thorax with the forearm pronated. And now the therapist resists the supination while the patient also laterally rotates the arm against resistance. Speed's test. Okay, now forward flexing his arm in supination at 90 degree, and I'm telling him to resist the the downward force. Proximal biceps tendon tear. A bicep tendon rupture often occurs after a sudden contraction of the biceps with resistance to flexion of the elbow and supination of forearm. It occurs after a traumatic fall on the outstretched hand, heavy lifting weight, or consistently sport activities such as snowboarding and soccer. Patient will have a history of sudden pop or pain at anterior shoulder, but it won't be persisting for long. It will be just present at the initial event. Maybe he'll have the bruises at the anterior shoulder that will track distally. On examination, you will find the Popeye deformity, that is the bulge that is found distally. Range of motion is usually normal. Weakness will be felt on elbow flexion with hand in supinated position, and also there might be a tenderness to palpate at the site of tear. Now this is the Popeye deformity. Subacromial impingement syndrome, where there will be impingement of subacromial bursa, the rotator cuff muscles, tendons, the bicep tendon, which will be between acromion, the acromioclavicular joint, coracoid process, and the humeral head. Now there are two types of impingement. First is the primary impingement and the secondary impingement. In case of primary impingement, it's generally due to degeneration or rotator cuff tear or change in the acromion shape, or it might be congenital. Secondary impingement is due to the weakness in scapular stabilizers. Now patient will come up with history where the pain radiates from superolateral shoulder to lateral brachium. There will be pain with reaching, no rest pain, and there will be incidence onset, and there won't be any change in shoulder pain with neck range of motion. On examination, there will be scapular dyskinesis seen on forward elevation, limited passive internal rotation, passive range of motion is more or equal to active range of motion. So there will be tenderness when you palpate at coracoid process. Then there will be the tests that will be positive are Mears test, the Hawkins test, and the empty can test. Mears test. So here, with the depressing of the scapula, I'm internally rotating his arm and forward flexing it. While doing so, the patient might feel pain at the shoulder, and we can see the glimpse on his face. Hawkins-Kennedy test. It's also for the subacromial impingement, where the patient is seated with arm in 90-degree forward elevation, and test is done by passive forced internal rotation in different degrees of adduction or abduction. And the positive test is if there's pain in the shoulder. So yeah. Now here the painful arc syndrome, where while doing abduction, so between 60 to 120 degrees of abduction, if the patient feels pain, then it's positive for impingement, or it's called as glenohumeral painful arc. And if at the 170 to 180 degree of abduction, if he feels pain, then it's or is unable to do so, then it's the acromioclavicular painful arc. Scapular dyskinesis. Scapular syndrome refers to scapular malpositioning, inferior medial border prominence, coracoid pain, malposition, and dyskinesis of scapular movement. And basically, it's an overuse syndrome. Now, this Kibler's classification for scapular dyskinesis. On the left side, where you have the first picture, the prominence of the inferomedial border of the scapula. This is due to the weakness of lower traps or the latissimus dorsi. In the second picture, you can clearly see the medial border, which is very prominent. It's due to the weakness of serratus anterior. And in the third picture, You can see there's prominence of superomedial border, which is due to the weakness of medial traps, rhomboids, or the atrophy in the upper trap muscles. Patient will come with a history that he would be an overhead athlete, and there will be different pain positions, like suppose it may be anterior shoulder pain, posterior superior scapular pain, superior shoulder pain, proximal lateral arm pain, or any combination of the above. Amongst all, the anterior shoulder pain is very common. Now, on examination, you just first go for the clinical observation of the scapula and its position, and these are further the symptom alerting tests. First is the scapular assistance test, where during abduction or forward elevation, assistance is provided by the therapist by manually stabilizing the scapula and rotating infero-medial border of scapula. This process will stimulate the couple activity of serratus anterior and lower traps. If there's elimination or modification of impingement symptoms, it will indicate a positive test. Wall push-up test. Now the patient is told to do wall push-ups, which is done for the evaluating anterior strength, serratus anterior strength. Abnormalities may be noted with 5 to 10 wall push-ups. Lateral scapular slide test, where the medial angle of scapula is palpated, marked on both the sides. Spinous process is considered to be the reference point, and then the distance is measured between the two sides in 3 different positions. The first position will be at the resting position, second with the hands on hips with fingers anterior and thumb posterior, and third with the arms at 90 degrees with internal rotation. A 1.5 centimeter asymmetry in the threshold is the indication for any abnormality present. Then we have the scapular retraction test, where the patient is told to retract both the scapula for 15 to 20 seconds without any burning pain or muscle weakness. If scapular weakness is there, then it may manifestate as instability to maintain a sustained contraction, and also there will be burning pain associated with it. Now this Lennard test will be done at 3 different positions. First at the T2 superior angle, T4 at the scapular spine, and T7 or T8 at the inferior angle, and the measurements will be taken accordingly and compared on both the sides. Calcific rotator cuff tendinopathy. It refers to deposition of calcium, predominantly hydroxyapatite, in a tendon. It's mostly seen in rotator cuff. It's predominant in women and mostly seen in 5th decade of life. The common locations will be the supraspinatus tendon, which accounts for 80% and hence most common. Infraspinatus tendon 15%, subscapularis tendon 5%. History. Patient will come with a history of night pain causing loss of sleep, constant dull leg. Pain increases considerably with active range of motion. There will be decrease in all over range of motion, and they'll complain of stiffness, and also it will include a radiating pain up to the suboccipital region or down onto the fingers. On examination, the diagnostic criteria are the swelling, temperature difference, and point tenderness. Both the range of motion will include pain. It will be decreased in all the lanes. There will be empty end fill, and the MMTs may be limited by pain. Glenohumeral instability is the most common problem, and it includes wide spectrum from ranging from symptomatic laxity of the shoulder joint to the frank dislocation. Associated with it other conditions like muscle imbalance, ligament laxity, or bony abnormalities. There are 3 types of instability. It can be anterior, posterior, inferior, or multidirectional instability. On examination, the direction of instability will follow the humeral head, arm hanging limp at side, inability to reach across body, inability to externally rotate arm, and then we have different tests. Now for anterior, we have anterior apprehension test where the patient may be in supine or sitting position. His arm will be abducted in 90 degrees and then externally rotated, where the therapist will be guiding hand and presses the humeral head in an anterior and inferior directions. So, for three different ligaments, three different angles of abduction are taken. That is, for superior glenohumeral ligament, we have 60 degree of abduction. For medial, we have 90 degree. And for inferior glenohumeral ligament, we have 120 degrees. Posterior apprehension test, where the patient is in supine or sitting position, where the examiner forward flexes the shoulder to 90 degree while standing the scapula with other hand. Sorry, stabilizing the scapula with other hand. Examiner then applies a posterior force on the elbow and moves the arm in adduction and medial rotation. Inferior apprehension test, where the patient stands with the arm abducted to 90 degrees and elbow extended and resting on top of the examiner's shoulder. Examiner clasps his hands around the patient's humerus and pushes the humerus down and forward. In the sulcus may also be seen above the coracoid process. Now the sulcus test, where the therapist is standing behind him, he grabs the patient's forearm below the elbow and pulls the arm distally. If you see any sulcus there, then the test is positive. Thank you so much for patiently listening to me.